So the first thing I want to ask you is, what's it like running against your boss?
It's not easy, obviously. It's a really difficult step, but it was one that I took with a lot of careful consideration and thought. And, I really believed it was necessary for this community if we were going to move into a better direction.
How are you going to do things differently than your predecessor?
A lot of that comes from just having done this work for really almost a quarter of a century now. So I bring a lot of experience to this, and the way that I'm going to do it differently is really kind of build a lot of coalitions within the community and within law enforcement to really deliver public safety. And then, of course, first and foremost, build up a really healthy, strong office where the workforce feels very supported and energized to deliver.
What are these coalitions you're mentioning?
Well, I think when we talk about how do we reduce things like gun violence, it really comes, in my mind, through working with community organizations that are out there working with youth and with kind of the people that are at risk. And if we're not actually building those coalitions, I think we're missing in a large spot. So it is making sure that there's also that idea that there's access to the justice system. And I'm one that has always advocated and worked to get our attorneys out in the community so that people feel like they have, a bridge to the courthouse and to all that it has to offer. There are lots of services for victims, and there's services for individuals that are trying to get their life back in order, and I want to make sure that we're always building those bridges.
And in terms of your predecessor, are there any things that you appreciate that he's done that you want to keep going?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I talk about is that there is a unit within our office that was created. It's called the Justice Integrity Unit, and it's something that, I have ideas about how to change and improve, but it's important work, and I want to see that continue, and so that's certainly something I'm going to do.
Do you want to prosecute more than Schmidt?
I think the simple answer to that question is yes. But I think when we really dig into it, I want to do a better, more effective, and efficient job at doing that. And for me, it really comes down to being compassionate, but also holding people accountable.
What does that mean? What does compassion and accountability look like together?
Yeah, it means whether it's the smaller crimes or even some of the felony kind of property crimes, it's making sure that we are holding people accountable, that the cases are going into our court system, that they are having to face justice for that. But the compassionate side is, this isn't about, hey, we just want to find people that commit a crime and then go lock them up. That's not it at all. What I teach all of my young attorneys, and I'm always very clear, is we should be looking at how do we get people out of the criminal justice system. And we do that when we are very careful in how we look at things like what is bringing them into the criminal justice system. Is it substance abuse disorder? Is it mental health? There are a lot of reasons that can bring someone. Maybe it's their past trauma. And so if we're looking at how do we address those underlying things, then we're also looking at how do we create a healthy community.
How does bringing people into the criminal justice system better help them stay out of it than other ways?
Yeah. I would be clear that it's not me bringing them in. These are crimes that these individuals have committed. What it is it's acknowledging that, it's taking that on that, and making sure that there is an important role that accountability plays in our community. And then oftentimes what happens is we encounter individuals that are in crisis. And it may be the first time that anyone is able to really kind of recognize and deal with that. And so when that individual is in crisis, we have an opportunity to really help kind of get them back on track.
Your predecessor has said that more prosecution or lengthier punishments doesn't deter crime. What would you say to that, given that you would like to prosecute more?
Well, I would say that having accountability in our community does deter crime, and I would disagree with him on that. Now, the length of punishment, I think that's a question where you have to really look at the individual and what occurred. For violent crimes like rape and murder, yeah, I do think that prison is an appropriate punishment. For other crimes, we need to take a closer look. When we're talking about felony property crimes, when we're talking about shoplifts and retail thefts, they need to be held accountable. But then there's a lot of room there, I think, to look at what is bringing them into the system and how can we give them life skills that maybe will keep them out of the system in the future.
One thing you've talked about is ending open-air drug use. Advocates tell us that people using in public helps us better identify who needs help. So how do you plan to go about it if we end it entirely?
Well, I believe first and foremost is it's fine to identify who they are, but we shouldn't let them continue to use over and over. Once we have identified them, then it's time to actually take steps to intervene and change that behavior, because it's two parts. Certainly, part one is that has a negative impact on that individual when they're continually using without any check on their behavior, and we see people overdosing and dying on a regular basis, sadly. And then the other part is that doesn't create a healthy community for the rest of us. Whether it's kids trying to go to school, families going to the park, people coming downtown to restaurants or shops, people traveling from around the world to come to our beautiful city. We need to make sure that we are maintaining a healthy city, and we can do that if we actually lean into this and work on this issue.
Some advocates say that overdoses have actually increased just because basically what they're saying is that people have felt more comfortable getting help because they don't fear criminalization. So if they fear criminalization, do you think that they will still get that help, or how do you plan to mitigate that concern?
Well, I can tell you that just looking back on the past few years, what we've seen under this kind of proposal of, well, we'll just let them do what they want, it hasn't worked. We've seen overdoses go up year after year after year. And the idea, in my mind, of sitting back and allowing people just, to continue to suffer and die is not acceptable. Do I think that that actually leaning in and working with people that are struggling is going to help them? I do. I believe that we can either choose to be a part of the solution, or we can sit back and just let it see what happens. And unfortunately, the past few years have demonstrated clearly that that's not working.
Do you agree with advocates who say those overdose numbers are going up simply because people aren't scared anymore of being criminalized?
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. What I see is that individuals are continuing, to use in a manner that is, it allows them to get into a pattern where, we are keeping them somewhere from rising out and getting treatment and being healthy, but yet not quite dying. And we're keeping them in this hard level where oftentimes, our firefighters, first responders, people from Portland Street Response and others, they're constantly giving individuals Narcan and, just barely keeping them alive. And, I think we need to do better. And that means actually helping people get out of that cycle, get into treatment, and start working towards better solutions.
And since you'll be DA with the changes coming to Measure 110, how do you plan to work with the county to establish treatment or deflection programs, if at all?
Yeah, it's one that we actually need to lean into and get to work on. I'll tell you that I believe that the county has an interest in doing this, and it means that we need things like data analysts, legal assistant staffs, and attorneys to work on these issues, because if we want to be a part of the solution, we need to have the staff that matches that. I intend to ask for that and to push for that, because I believe that we have a huge opportunity here. The community is really interested in seeing this change, and I know my office wants to see this change as well. And I believe that we can do it in a very compassionate manner where we can create a support network to help individuals get into treatment. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be quick. But it is going to be a situation where if we're dedicated to it and we believe that we can do the work, we can at least start moving that forward, because every day, sadly, we're losing lives right now.
Many have said we're in a constitutional crisis because of our lack of public defenders. You've said that that will be a priority of yours to get that staffing up, and that you have a list of names of people. How soon can we start seeing those PD numbers going up?
Well, I take office on January 1st of 2025, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to start working to try to push on this, because it's going to be an issue that's going to take a short-term, intermediate, and long-term approach. I would love to say that in the first year of my tenure that we're going to see that change, but I think it's going to take a while. And but I'll tell you that it's not something I'm going to sit and wait on. I'm going to be very active in trying to push this forward and make changes necessary to see that those cases get through our system. Because from where I sit, those are cases in which victims aren't being served, and oftentimes individuals that are in crisis, they are out there, without having their case being dealt with in our system.
And you said next year we'd be seeing those changes. What do you mean by those changes? Fully staffed? What does that look like?
Well, next year is when I take office, so January of 2025, and it means that, I will be pushing to have more of those cases assigned. I'll, as soon as when we have our next legislative session, I'll be pushing for bills that will request changes in our current system. And I'll be, of course, partnering and trying to work with our public defender's office to see that in the ways in which we can be the most efficient and help. And that of course means that from the district attorney's standpoint, we need to be working with them in how we resolve cases and how we can do things in an efficient manner to get us to a place that's healthy for everyone.
And do you have a plan for how to address that?
Yes. As I've said kind of multiple times, there's a short term, which is trying to bring in attorneys to help in the immediate, and then in the intermediate is to look at, with our current contracts and things that are being delivered, is there enough transparency? Is there enough accountability there with those public defense firms? And, I really believe that we would be better suited if we had the judges in a position where the law allows them to kind of dig in a little deeper. It's not that I, as the district attorney, think that I have a role in assigning those cases and things of that nature, but at least I want our system to function the way it should, which is the judge is getting to make those decisions, because that's not currently happening. And then long term, I want to partner with them, I want to work with them to create a system that is healthy. If that is a state-run system, if it's something else, I'm happy to work with them to see that, because in the end, what matters most is that we have a healthy, functioning system that our entire community can rely upon, that we're going to be able to do the work. And if that means increases in pay, increases in funding for that system, of course I'm going to support that as well.
And a list of top priorities as soon as you get in office?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty clear on these points, is that I do want to see us make progress on ending open-air drug use, on ending these open-air drug dealing. Those are kind of going to be some of the top priorities. But I want to see gun violence continue to come down. This is an area that has been really difficult for our community. We've seen far too many homicides. We've seen far too many families having to suffer from that trauma. So I really want to see that turnaround as well.
And accountability will help that?
Yes, because one of the things I've talked about throughout my campaign is that idea of compassion and accountability. And what I see is that when we allow things to go unchecked, unfortunately, we do see times where it grows into something much more violent. And so we need to be kind of a every day working on that issue to make sure that we are doing all we can to be compassionate, but also hold people accountable.
With compassionate accountability, some of our viewers are kind of confused about where you stand politically. What I've been hearing is people wondering, do you consider yourself a progressive?
It's interesting, because if you talk to the everyday person, there's a lot of different definitions of what they think a progressive is. I think there are absolutely components of being progressive that I identify with. Things such as looking for alternatives to prison to get people into treatment, into mental health. So those are things that I push for. I advocate for criminal justice reform, and I'm someone that believes in that. I want to do it in a way that always values victims and make sure that we're not sacrificing public safety. But I absolutely want to see those goals move forward. So in no way is my election a symbol that we're somehow abandoning that. What I believe it is that we're taking it on in a much more pragmatic, practical way. And we're doing it from a lens of 2 decades of experience, or over 2 decades of experience, to deliver it in a healthy manner for our community.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I'm just really looking forward to taking office, and I want the community to know that even those that either didn't vote for me or didn't endorse me, that I want to be also represent them as well, and I want to make sure that their voices are heard, and I want them to be a part of this conversation and a part of how we deliver public safety, because I believe that everyone in Portland is interested in us becoming kind of our best, healthy, safe version we can be. And I see a lot of people that work so hard on that, on kind of both sides of this, this campaign. And I really want to see us move forward and come together to accomplish that goal.